All right, we are right at the top of the hour here, so we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Hi there, and thank you for joining us today for our pop-up on debt management. My name is Jen, and this is Gabby, and we're part of the community engagement team here at Horizon Credit Union. Participants have been muted and cameras are off, but please use the chat or Q&A for any questions that you have, and we'll use the participant guide throughout the pop-up. The link for that is in your event invite, and I'll put it in the chat also, or have put it in the chat also. And then you can also use scratch paper to follow along for any calculations if you're unable to download that guide. So not necessary by any means. The goals for today's workshop are all focused on giving you a realistic perspective about debt, presenting strategies for managing your own debt, and supporting you as you consider next steps. By the end of today's workshop, you'll be able to understand why people find themselves in debt and the most common types of debt, use and analyze budgeting and debt management strategies, compare various debt management solutions, and create a personal plan for how to manage your debt. Debt is something that millions of people deal with. Learning how to manage debt is one of the most important things a person can do to improve their financial health. How many of you have felt the effects of debt on your life? I know I certainly have. Maybe paying off debt has prevented you from saving money and forced you to live paycheck to paycheck. It may also be possible that debt has caused some tension in your home. Debt can impact you in a way that is as simple as not being able to go out to dinner as often as you'd like, or as big as not being able to accomplish large personal goals like college savings or buying a home. In this workshop, we'll learn how to take positive steps to address our debt. Over 75% of all American adults are in debt. Did you know that the average American has about $38,000 in personal debt? You can see this broken down by age group on the slide here. A growing number of Gen Zers have taken on some type of debt now that they're old enough to get loans and credit cards. The average debt for this group is $22,000, with student loans listed as the highest form of debt. Probably not surprising there. For millennials, credit cards are the leading source of debt. On average, millennials owe $42,000 in debt. For Gen Xers, home mortgages are the primary source of debt, with Gen Xers also carrying $39,000 of additional debt on average. Baby boomers age 50 and over have the second lowest amount of debt, which is not surprising, and that's a good thing. They carry on average $36,000 in debt. However, and surprisingly, this is actually mostly credit card debt, according to a recent survey. So not great. At that age, you want to be paying those off and not accumulating more debt. Now we're going to take a quick poll about debt. How do you think having debt could negatively affect your life? Choose the best response in the poll and we'll discuss the results. So your options here are mental health, relationships, life goals, and planning for emergencies.
I can't vote, but I'm going to say mental health.
All right, absolutely. I would agree there. And also mental health looks like it's coming through 100% as well. So I would argue all of those for sure. So we'll wrap that up. And the truth is that being in debt can affect all of these things. Being in debt causes us stress and can impact our relationships. 21% of people say debt has caused household tension, and 31% say debt has had an impact on their health. Plus, 15% of millennials say they've held off on getting married and having children because of debt. When we have high amounts of debt, we have trouble saving for a retirement or a down payment for a home, both of which help us to plan for the future. As you can see, the effects of debt seep into many different parts of our lives and can have a serious and lasting impact. The only solution is debt management, which is why we're here today. Before we get into a deeper discussion, though, about managing our debt, we need to explore exactly what debt is. When you think about the term debt, what comes to mind? What's your definition? Well, it comes in many forms. If you can think of any different types, feel free to add those to the chat, or Gabby, feel free to shout any out you can think of. I'm going to throw out right off the top credit card debt. That's the first one I think of. That's kind of the...
mortgages.
Yes, absolutely. Even student loans and medical debt. A lot of people don't factor in medical debt. So there's a lot of different places that darn debt can come from. Okay, so there are many different types of debt and many different ways a person can get into debt, which is why we see it connected to so many different sources. The official definition of debt, though, is money owed for products or services purchased on credit. Simple interest is interest calculated on the principal amount of a loan. The interest is the amount we're being charged to borrow money. The interest is a percentage of the principal. The interest percentage can vary depending on the product or service. For instance, in 2018, credit card interest rates were about 17% on average, while car loan interest rates were about 5%. So when researching loans, it's important to consider the interest rates that are being offered because a lower interest rate means that you'll pay less in fees to the lender over the life of your loan. On the other hand, if you're investing money in a savings account, you're acting as the lender, and therefore you want the highest interest rate so that you can earn the most money on your investment. Interest rates can either be fixed, which means that they stay the same during the life of the loan, or variable, meaning that they change according to the economy or your credit agreement. A fixed interest rate is typically a safer bet than a variable one because you know what the amount you'll be charged over the life of the loan is. It'll remain the same. With a fixed interest rate, there will be no surprises. A variable interest rate, well, we shouldn't say no. There'll be very, very few less surprises. A variable interest rate is more uncertain because the actual amount that you'll be charged can change according to your credit agreement or economic factors. That being said, variable interest rates can be an attractive thing when current standard interest rates are high. For instance, if auto loan interest rates are high and you need to purchase the car, it may be advantageous to get a variable interest rate loan, so you can benefit if the interest rates do go down. Now, these are very basic definitions of interest rates and are not meant to guide your purchasing decisions on their own. What's most important is understanding that when it comes to debt management, interest rates can play a big part and make a big difference in your ability to manage that debt. Now that we know how interest works, let's calculate interest in a real-life example. Let me tell you the story of Ralph and the regrettable roof repair. In the middle of a particularly wet winter, Ralph's roof started leaking. He called the roofing company, which quoted him $3,000 for the repairs. But Ralph had just purchased a new car and he was paying for his son's college tuition. He just didn't have the cash on hand. Unfortunately, he couldn't wait. Rain was in the weekend forecast and his mother-in-law was coming for a visit. So he did what most of us would do. He charged the repair to his credit card. The APR, that is the credit card interest rate plus any fees, on Ralph's credit card was 17%. And Ralph planned on paying $50 per month. Okay, so $3,000 isn't too bad until you factor in the interest. So how much do you think Ralph ended up paying for, or excuse me, how long do you think it took Ralph to pay off this $3,000 loan? We'll launch another poll here and feel free to throw out a guess or pull out your phone and do some quick calculations if you would like to. $135 is the first one I'm seeing at 100%. All right, we'll give it just a second. And yep, still 100%. You guys are good. So it will take Ralph 135 months to pay off that credit card debt. That's over 11 years. By that time, Ralph will need a brand new roof. And what's worse, Ralph will end up having paid an extra $3,743 in interest for that credit card loan, meaning that when all is said and done, this roof repair will have cost Ralph nearly $7,000. He'll have paid more in interest than he actually even paid on the principal. Ralph will be in debt. Ralph's situation is not unusual, unfortunately. In fact, these types of situations contribute to many people's financial issues. Unexpected expenses come up all the time, and without any emergency savings, your options can be severely limited. And Gabby will take it away here. Oh, you're on mute, Miss Gabby.
I'm sorry, we have gardeners. Surprise.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest source of debt in America? Choose your answer in the next poll. So we'll go ahead and launch that. I'm gonna guess
I'm seeing student loans and credit cards split at 50-50. And I'm gonna throw mortgage into the ballpark for my guess.
I know, you would think because it's so expensive.
Yeah, it just seems like those are the highest balances. But yeah, we're still at 50-50 student loans and credit cards.
So in fact, mortgage debt and credit card debt are tied for the leading source of debt in America. Mortgage debt makes sense. Property is a huge purchase, but credit card debt, where's all the money going? According to a recent survey, it's going towards entertainment. Dining and nightlife account for 15% of all credit card debt, followed by hobbies and passions, personal care, clothing, and travel. Take a look at the chart on the screen to find out what people are charging in their daily lives. Even though there are all these different types of debt, not all debt is the same. Some debt is often considered good debt, if you can believe that, and the rest is pretty clearly bad debt. What do you think that means? And what makes something good debt or bad debt? Any guesses? Go ahead and type them in the chat if you have anything. I'm going to guess maybe a mortgage is a good debt because you are working to own something.
I was gonna say I'm sticking with mortgage on this answer too.
Okay.
Don't see anything in
Really
the
quick,
chat.
the screen on what okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm all backwards.
All right, nope.
Okay,
I went to advance to the next slide. I'll click on you there.
okay. So what is good debt? Debt that provides you with a financial advantage, like a mortgage, is often referred to as good debt because the financial rewards that you receive from the purchase counter the cost. Mortgage debt is often considered good debt because it's tax deductible and property has a tendency to appreciate or increase in value over time. However, if the property does not appreciate in value or if mortgage loan carries a high interest rate, mortgage debt can be a bad debt. Similarly, student loans are considered a good debt because getting an education may increase your earning potential. However, if you take out a loan and you never finish your degree, the debt does become a bad debt. The worst type of debt is the costliest. It usually comes from high credit cards with high interest rates to pay for things like dining and entertainment when you don't actually have the money to pay it back. Some financial experts consider new cars to be a bad debt because they depreciate in value as soon as you drive them off the lot. Now, even though good debt can help you in the long run, it is still debt and it is still money that needs to be paid back. To determine a person's financial health, we have to look at all the debt, good and bad. One way lenders and other experts may assess financial health is to look at something called the debt to income ratio or DTI ratio. The DTI ratio is just what it sounds like, a ratio of a person's total debt to their income. To calculate the ratio, you add up all your monthly debt payments and divide that number by your gross monthly income, so your income before taxes. Let's calculate Anita's DTI. Anita has a monthly gross income of $5,000 and total debts of $2,000. Using the DTI equation, that will give us 0.4. So Anita's DTI ratio is 40%. Are you ready to calculate your own DTI? Turn to the My Debt to Income Ratio on worksheet 3 of your participant guide, or use the calculations found on the screen. Complete the equation to find your own DTI ratio. And you guys may not know all this information offhand. You can kind of just ballpark it in your head and get an example or save it for later. You can download the participant guide and do that after this, but I'll give you a little bit to try it out and see where you land.
I think I've mentioned this before, but this was definitely one of the eye openers for me when I first got into financial education. I was like, oh dear, we have some work to do.
Yeah, definitely. A rude awakening.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move on and feel free to go back and do that later because like Jen said, it is really helpful. According to financial experts, your DTI ratio should be lower than 40% and below 37 is even better. If your DTI ratio is higher than you'd like, there are two main things you can do. Increase your monthly earnings or reduce your debt. We'd all like to make more money, but even if you do find a new job, it may take a longer time to change your income, especially if you need more training or need to go back to school. What we do have some control over is how we manage our money. The first and most important step in managing debt and managing all money really is creating a solid budget. Budgeting creates a cash flow plan that allows us to live within our means so we don't accumulate any additional debt and can work to pay off our existing debt while working towards reaching our financial goals. Many experts recommend that people create a budget following the 50-30-20 rule. What is the 50-30-20 rule? With this rule, 50% of your income should go towards your needs or your necessary expenditures like housing and food. Keep in mind that needs also include bills that you need to pay each month, including the minimum debt payments on your credit cards. 30% goes towards wants or the fun stuff like hobbies and dining out, and 20% should go towards savings or additional debt payments beyond the minimum payments on your credit card. Remember, this is not a hard or fast rule, but a recommended guideline. There may be many instances, for example, where your needs, including your housing, cost more than 50%. The 50-30-20 rule is also highlighted on page 3 of your participant guide for reference. Now, let's take a look at Anita's expenses and see if she's following the 50-30-20 rule. Look at Anita's expenses on the slide and complete this activity. To calculate the percentage of Anita's income that she can use to pay for her needs and wants, you'll take the grand total and divide them by her monthly income after taxes. This is different than her gross income, which is the amount she earns before taxes. Anita's net income after taxes is the amount she actually sees on her paycheck. Multiply the result of your calculation by 100 to get her percentage. Review Anita's expenses. Do you think she's following the 50-30-20 rule? Let's take a look at her percentages. Anita's monthly income after taxes is $5,000. If we divide her total needs of $3,750 from her income, what we see is that she's spending 75% of her income in this area, and she's spending 20% of her income on wants. Let's see what she can do to pay down her debt and add to her savings. If we look at Anita's wants and needs, she only has 5% remaining. 20% is the goal she should aim for and the place she'll want to get to. We'll talk about credit scores next.
So being in debt can affect your credit score and have a long-term impact. Do you know what your credit score is? Your credit score is a number applied to your overall credit history. It's kind of like an adult responsibility card. It's the number lenders use to determine how risky it is to give you a loan. The best credit score you can get is 850, and anything 700 or above is considered to be good or excellent. If you have a lower credit score than that, it may be harder to get loans and credit cards, since lenders may feel that they can't trust you. Factors that affect your credit score include your payment history, your available credit, your credit history, any new credit you may have acquired, and types of credit. Now, I have a question for you that I'd like you to answer in the next poll. What do you think is the most important factor in determining your credit score among those previous ones I just gave you? So, most important factor in determining your credit score. Payment history, available credit, length of credit history, your new credit, or the mix of credit types you have. Feel free
I'm gonna
to
go available credit.
Available credit, absolutely. Oh, and I'm also seeing available credit come through at 100% so far in the poll. So if anybody else has a guess, squeeze that in here really quick. We'll just give it a couple seconds. All right, so available credit is the winner. However, oh, excuse me, I got off track there. So your payment history, actually, paying your bills on time is the most important factor in determining your credit score. It makes sense, really. If you haven't paid your bills on time in the past, lenders believe that you'll be likely to miss a payment in the future. What about the total amount of debt? How much do you think your overall debt factors into your credit score? Well, having a lot of debt compared to the credit limit on your credit cards and loans sends a red flag to lenders that you may be having trouble paying your bills, and they might not want to give you a new loan. Unfortunately, when you have a low credit score, this affects much more than just your ability to get credit cards and loans. Your credit score is checked when you apply for a cell phone, a rental property, utilities, auto and homeowners insurance, and even government programs. It may even be checked when you apply for a new job in some states. Companies may refuse to offer you services if you have a low credit score, while other companies may offer you the services, but with a very high interest rate. And if you end up getting the service with the really high interest rate, it can push you even further into debt. That's why they call it a debt spiral, unfortunately. So let's look at another example. Minho and his friend Javier were planning on buying similar homes for $300,000 with a 20% down payment on a 30-year loan. However, Minho's credit score was much lower than Javier's at the time, so his interest rate ended up being 1% higher than that of Javier, who had better credit. Well, Minho didn't mind. 1% didn't seem like a big difference to him, and he talked to his friend Javier about that home loan rate. When Javier did the math to show him how much more he would be paying, $2,000 a year more in interest payments alone, or over $60,000 in interest over the life of the loan, Minho decided to hold off. Javier figured this out by multiplying his principal by the interest rate and the time. The calculation Javier used to figure this out was I equals P times R times T. So I is the interest rate, P is the principal or the amount you borrowed, R is the interest rate, and T is the time. After Javier explained all of this to Minho and showed him just how much more he'd be paying, Minho decided to work on improving his credit score before purchasing that new home. As you can see, both your credit score and factors such as market fluctuation can have a pretty serious effect on the interest rates banks offer you or credit unions offer you for a loan. In our scenario, Javier was able to put a lot more money towards savings in retirement because of his good credit. Minho, on the other hand, just seemed to be accruing more debt trying to pay all of his bills. So he did decide to wait. Financial experts recommend that any extra funds be applied to the following accounts in the following order. And this may surprise you, so bear with me here. But number one is to create an emergency fund with 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I know that may sound intimidating right now, but we'll talk about that more. Number two, maximize your 401k retirement contributions if you have an employer match, and that is if your employer matches your retirement contribution amount. Make sure to take advantage of that. That's free money. Number three, pay off high interest and high APR debt. That one's pretty clear, right? That's what we're here for. Number four, contribute 15% of your gross income or your income before taxes to a retirement account like a 401k. And finally, number five, pay off lower interest debts with anything more than the 20% you have saved. You can do this by reducing the amount spent on wants or needs. Let's talk about these recommendations because, like I said, they might surprise you, may not be what you'd expect. So why do you think an emergency fund is number one? Well, because just like we learned with Ralph, having an emergency fund enables you to cover the cost of emergencies to avoid taking on more debt. If you find it difficult to save 3 to 6 months of living expenses, experts recommend that you aim for $500, enough to cover some common emergencies, and a good starting point. What about number two? Why is it so important to maximize the employee match on a 401k? If your employer matches your 401k contributions, this is free money. Just like I said, take advantage of it. Not contributing the maximum amount is just throwing that away. Plus, the earlier you begin saving for retirement, the greater the potential gains made on your investment. I often tease if I could go back and tell younger Jen that. Number three makes sense though. So we want to pay off those high interest debts. But let's look at number 4 and 5. Why do you think contributing to a retirement fund is more important than paying off low interest debts? Well, because generally the earlier you start saving for retirement, the more money you'll have when you are ready to retire. The amount of money that you'll save paying off low interest debts is generally assumed to be less than the amount you'll earn by contributing to retirement early. So, as you see, there's a strategy involved in paying off your debts. Many people focus only on paying off debts without giving any consideration to savings, but this may be a huge mistake. In addition to debt payments, planning for emergencies and retirement are important factors. Neglecting these areas may seem to help you in the short term, freeing up the maximum amount of funds possible to put towards your debt, right? But it's a strategy that may cause you more financial hardship in the future. Now we'll learn about a couple of popular debt repayment strategies. So financial experts often recommend 2 strategies for paying off debt as quickly as possible. These are known as the avalanche method and the snowball method. The avalanche method focuses on paying off the debts that have the highest interest rates first, while paying the minimum payments on the rest of your debts. The theory here that the high interest rate debt will end up costing you more in the long run, so it's good to pay these off as quickly as possible. The snowball method focuses on paying off the debt with the lowest balances first, while paying the minimum amount due on the rest of your debts. The thinking here is that you can pay off lower balances more quickly than higher balances, right? So paying off these loans will reduce your debt to available credit ratio, and they'll help to give you a sense of accomplishment. And let's be honest, the mental part does factor in mental, emotional, certainly with money. So we're going to watch a quick video to help us remember the difference between snowball and avalanche methods, and we'll even touch on loan consolidation in there. So please enjoy. We'll change our share here, but please enjoy the Debt Yeti.
So old, must be moving.
Hot cocoa?
Ooh, why thank you. Wait a second. Ah, who are you? Wait, where am I?
Hello, my tiny human friend. My name is Dave, and I am a debt yeti. And you're here in the mountain.
What? I don't want to be here.
No one does. But as you know, consumer debt is a slippery slope. Debt can be painful.
Ow.
It's stressful, it's expensive, and it limits the amount of money you can put toward other things.
So how do I get out of here?
Hey, chill. You simply have to choose a debt repayment strategy.
Of course, but I don't know any.
Start by making a list of all your debts. Credit card, medical, student loans, you name it. You'll need to know the balance, the interest rate, and the minimum payment for each debt. Then you can choose from the following strategies: the snowball method, the avalanche method, or consolidation. The snowball method is good for beginners. In it, you arrange your debts from smallest balance to largest balance. Every month, set aside as much money as possible for debt repayment. Then, after making the minimum payment on all your debts, the rest goes toward paying off the debt with the smallest balance. Paying off those smaller loans frees up more money to put toward debt repayment.
Like a snowball getting larger and larger.
That's right. Plus, the small victories can give you some much needed motivation if you're feeling completely overwhelmed.
What if I'm not totally overwhelmed, but still have a lot of debt?
The avalanche method is, mathematically speaking, the most powerful debt repayment strategy. In it, you arrange your debts by interest rate, from highest to lowest. Every month, you make the minimum payment on each, and the rest of the money you set aside for debt repayment goes toward the loan with the highest interest rate.
So you get rid of your most expensive debt first.
Exactly. Now, sometimes that debt may also have a large balance, so it might not feel like you're making as much progress as in the snowball method. But if you can weather the storm, the avalanche method is worth it.
Nice. I mean, cool.
Then there's consolidation. This can be a helpful strategy if you're having trouble keeping track of all your various debts and their payment dates. When you consolidate your loans, you take out a new loan and use the borrowed money to pay off all your other debts. You are then left with only one loan, and therefore only one interest rate and one payment date to worry about.
I do like the sound of that.
You still have to do your research and make sure it's right for you. The new loan may have additional fees or a higher interest rate than your current combined debts. Your credit union can give you more information on the loan options available to you.
Snowball, avalanche, and consolidation. Those are some helpful strategies, Dave, but I was hoping for something a little more immediate.
I see. Well, how about the sled strategy? The only thing you need for this one is your balance.
You mean for my loans or just...
All right, so the trick is to get rid of this before the next one pops up. Okay, so we'll get our presentation back up here. All right, perfect. So take a look at the slide and I'll ask you a couple of questions. I'll give you just a few seconds to think about these and then you can just respond in the chat. We won't have a formal poll for this. So Kaylee has the following debt shown on the screen. Using the avalanche method, which debt would Kaylee pay off first? Anybody care to venture a guess? So she's got her major credit card at 26%, $3,000, retail credit card at 22%, $800, personal loan at 15%, $1,800. So, let me get to the chat here. I'm seeing A, and 3K. Yes, so that would actually also work for the interest rate answer too. So yes, the correct answer is A. The avalanche method recommends that you pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So in this example, that would be the major credit card. After that's been paid, she can move on to the store credit card. Using the snowball method, which debt would Kaylee pay off first? Toss that in the chat if you're feeling brave. Ooh, I'm seeing B. I love it. And that is very true. So the snowball method recommends that you pay off the debt with the lowest balance first. In this example, that would be the store credit card or retail credit card. After that's been paid, you can move on to that personal loan. So great job understanding the avalanche and snowball methods and applying these to Kaylee's debt. Now let's talk about some do's and some don'ts related to repayment strategies. That was a lot of R's. Talking to creditors is number 1 on the list of do's. Negotiate with your creditors. Communicating with creditors may be the easiest way to manage your debt. When you don't pay your debts, creditors must spend time to keep contacting you. Spend time and money to keep contacting you. Therefore, it may be in their best interest to help you to stick to a repayment plan. Try requesting a lower interest rate, a lower monthly minimum payment, or even a lower interest rate. If you're having trouble paying your bills on time, you may even request a deferment. A deferment postpones your debt payment for a limited time, allowing you to get your finances in order. Next up is credit counseling. You may also try this. Credit counselors are usually nonprofit organizations that assist consumers with budgeting and debt management. They can provide you with educational materials, help you create a budget or a debt management plan, and may even negotiate with creditors on your behalf. You can find a list of reputable organizations with the Financial Counseling Association of America or the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. Also, GreenPath, offered to Horizon Credit Union members, is an accredited organization. So they are a credit counseling company and the one I would recommend for our members for sure. Be wary of credit counselors not endorsed by those organizations though. And if you're not sure, contact your state's Consumer Protection Agency. Just like I mentioned, GreenPath is available for Horizon Credit Union members and is an accredited organization. Up next, consolidate your debts. Debt consolidation or loan consolidation may be recommended if you have multiple high-interest loans. This could be the case if you carry a balance on multiple credit cards, have more than one student loan, or even if you have many different types of high-interest loans, like car loans, credit cards, personal loans, etc. Debt consolidation involves taking out a new loan with a competitive interest rate, an interest rate smaller than your existing loans, and then your smaller loans are transferred to this new loan, reducing both the amount that you have to pay each month, hopefully, and the total number of bills that you have to worry about. So this option may be helpful in managing monthly payments and paying off debt in a timely manner for some folks. Finally, consider hiring a debt settlement attorney. This may make sense for some situations. If your debt is overwhelmingly high and your wages are in the process of being actively garnished, that'd be a good example. So note that this is different from hiring a debt settlement company, which is on our next slide of don'ts. So next up, we'll talk about the repayment don'ts. Don't close your credit card accounts. This one. The first rule is avoid just closing out all your credit card accounts. While it may seem like a good idea to cancel your credit cards when you're in debt, because if you cancel them, you can't use them, right? Canceling your credit cards will hurt your credit score. That's going to reduce the amount of available credit that you have to you, and that's definitely going to hurt your credit score. So if you don't want to be tempted to use your credit cards, put them in a safe or inaccessible place. Don't borrow from your retirement plan. Secondly, avoid borrowing from your retirement plan. You've worked hard to build up this savings, and if you borrow from it, you may not be able to get back the earnings that you've lost. Plus, if you take money out of your retirement account now, you'll be hit with some extra taxes during tax season. So next up, don't hire a debt settlement company. Like we mentioned before, be careful about hiring a debt settlement company. Debt settlement is a risky option. There have been many cases of debt settlement companies charging customers without delivering on their promises and providing bad financial advice. Experts warn to never pay upfront fees for debt settlement and be on the lookout for those red flags if you consider that option. And finally, don't hide from your creditors. Like we mentioned before, they're spending time and money to contact you. Avoiding your debt won't solve anything. In fact, if your creditors are unable to reach you, they'll probably just send your debt to collections, consequence that we'll talk about coming up soon. And it may be possible to make a deal with your creditors on what you owe. So don't hide.
Okay. So let's see how debt consolidation helped Carmen, who was struggling to pay bills for multiple credit card balances. Since she was having problems paying all her credit card bills, she decided to explore debt consolidation. Let's take a look at her credit card bills on the screen. Through her bank, Carmen was able to get a debt consolidation loan that freed her of the stress of managing multiple monthly payments and reduced her monthly payment overall. Even though her balance is the same after debt consolidation, her interest rate of 16.5 is lower than the interest rate for credit cards A and C, meaning Carmen will have a less expensive payment. Debt consolidation is typically available through banks, credit unions, and online lenders. When researching debt consolidation options, consider the following. What is the maximum amount a lender will give you for debt consolidation? Is it enough to cover your debts? What is the average rate you are being charged in interest for all of the loans you wish to consolidate? Is the interest rate being offered for the new loan lower than this? Is the lender part of a reputable company such as a bank or credit union you're familiar with? And lastly, will you be able to make the payments on the new loan and stick to the repayment period set by the lender? For more information on debt consolidation, you may speak to a representative on our staff or consult with a credit counselor. Okay, the debt management series we've just covered are recommended steps in getting your finances in order. But what happens if these strategies just aren't enough? What happens when you've gotten into a serious financial situation that can't be handled with the debt management strategies described earlier? Let's talk about what happens when you can't pay your debts. As you can see, debt can be overwhelming. You may be unable to pay your bills and collectors might begin calling. It happens. In fact, it happens to a lot of people. About 35% of adults with a credit history have a debt in collections, owing an average of $5,178. In 2019, there were more than 750,000 bankruptcy filings. In this last section, we talk about what to do if you have a debt in collections or you're considering bankruptcy. Let's talk about collections. When debts have payments that are past due and you haven't paid your bills for some time, your account is transferred to collections. Debt collectors have a poor reputation because some use scare tactics, threats, and harassment when attempting to collect on a debt, even though these tactics are not always legal. For this reason, when debt goes into collection, it can be emotionally draining, and it will also have a negative effect on your financial well-being. The debt will remain in your credit report for 7 years, and collectors may sue you, leading to wage garnishment, liens on your property, repossession, or even foreclosure. It's important to know your rights in this situation. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act protects consumers from harassment from credit collectors. According to the FDCPA, debt collectors cannot call before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m., call you at work if you tell them not to, talk to anyone except your spouse about your debts, harass, abuse, or threaten you, and this includes using obscene language, misrepresent how much you owe, or use lies or deception to collect on the debt. If you think a debt collector is violating this law, you can file a complaint with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau or your state's Attorney General's office. If collectors are calling and you're not sure what to do, or you're not sure that the debt is really yours, you may want to consult with an attorney to assess your options, especially if the debt may be beyond the statute of limitations or the legal time in which you could be sued for the debt. A word of important advice: try and communicate with collectors through emails or letters sent through certified mail, so you have a paper trail of your correspondence should you need legal help in the future. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has helpful templates for corresponding with creditors and debt collectors on their website. If you're still having trouble paying your debts, you may also consider bankruptcy. Bankruptcy can help to give you a financial fresh start, but it is a serious step that shouldn't be taken lightly. The two most common types of bankruptcy are individuals can file for debt discharge, discharge meaning that certain debts are released from the debtor's responsibility, are Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. The type of bankruptcy a person files may depend on how much debt they have, their assets, and their wage earnings. For Chapter 7, you generally have to prove that you do not earn enough income to pay off your debts. Chapter 7 may be an option for people who do not have a lot of assets or property that could be liquidated to pay off the creditors. Chapter 13 bankruptcy is an option for people who generally earn a reliable source of income and can make a payment plan to pay off these debts within 3 to 5 years. Bankruptcy is serious because it remains on your credit report for up to 10 years. It may also be time-consuming and a stressful process. Furthermore, not all debts are discharged through bankruptcy. For example, student loan debt likely won't be forgiven with a bankruptcy filing. However, bankruptcy allows a person to freeze the pressure of creditors and seek a fresh start. If you're considering filing bankruptcy, it may be helpful to talk to a consumer or bankruptcy attorney so that you understand all your options. Now we're going to do this last activity. It's going to help you assess your financial health in relation to your debts. So you can go to the worksheet in the participant guide on page 4 or look it up after and just kind of do this part in your head. On the worksheet, please record your gross monthly income, which is your income before any taxes are taken out, and your debts. Write down the total balance remaining on each type of debt account: mortgage, credit cards, student loans, car loans, and any other loans, monthly payments for each, the APR on each debt. And I know it can be hard to remember exact figures, but just do the best you can. You can kind of ballpark it for now. And if your figures aren't exact, that's okay. So we're going to take a minute or so just to kind of do this in your head and figure out where you're standing. And you can feel free to use your phone to access accounts if necessary, and then you can work on and reference this later. So I'll give you about a minute to do that. Okay. So once you filled out this document, this can be a helpful tool to figure out which debt repayment strategy will work best for you. You now have the critical knowledge and skills of an elite group of Americans who can call themselves financially healthy. With financial health, you'll have far less stress, more confidence, better physical health, and stronger relationships. And you'll also have the freedom to do what debt is preventing you from doing right now, which is making your dreams come true. Does anybody have any questions that we can answer? I know there was one in the chat, Jen, but I did not
see it.
I did not know the answer, so.
Ooh, what credit score model does Horizon use for credit cards and indirect? That's a great question. I do not do lending. I'm gonna guess FICO because I think that's pretty much kind of across the board the general lending model or credit score model that financial institutions use. But again, I don't do that directly, so I am not a great resource for that question.
You probably have to reach out to someone in a branch, I would think.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wish we had a branch employee. They would know that in 2 seconds.
Oh, my camera went all weird. I apologize. But I'll do the last slide. So
well, you're just purple. You're pretty.
I know. So finally, you can continue your financial journey at the Financial Training Ground on HZCU.org. And there you can explore a variety of topics, including interactive guides at the top link shown, or create a personalized financial education playlist from the bottom link. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope you have a terrific day.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.